What's up guys, so for this tutorial series what we're going to be working on is how to make a tic-tac-toe game using Python and Pygame. Maybe towards the end of the series we're going to implement an AI that you can actually play against, but for now we're just going to start off with the basic design of the game. So to get started what we're going to have to do is import the assets. So I'm just going to paste them into my folder right here. I'll have a link in the description to where you can import these assets and put them in your game. As far as the game itself, the prerequisites that you need are obviously to have Python installed on your computer. If you don't have Python installed, I'm sure you can find videos online explaining what you have to do to get that taken care of. And then once you have Python installed, just make sure you go ahead and make sure you go ahead and install, like pip install Pygame. And yeah, for the IDE that I'm going to be using, it's going to be PyCharm. You don't have to use PyCharm, but if you want to match kind of what I'm doing, then you can go ahead and download that as well. So let's get started. So the first thing that we're going to do is import Pygame. So we're just going to type that out. Next, what you're going to want to do is initialize Pygame. So you're going to say pygame.init with 2 parentheses. And then let's go ahead and set the width and the height of the display screen that we want to have. So the board that I've used in the pictures is 600 by 600, and I'm thinking that after we get the game set up, I'm going to have a menu off to the side. So we're going to set the screen width to be 800 and the screen height to be, we can do like 600. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to import all the pictures that we're going to use. So let's say board is going to equal pygame.image.load, and then we'll set it to images. I think it's gs/board. Is it a PNG or is it a JPEG? It is a JPEG, so JPG. And then we'll say x_image equals pygame.image.load images/x.png, and then O is going to be the same thing, but just change the x's to O's. So the images are now set. We're also going to create a window. So we're going to say when equals pygame.display.setMode to the screen width and the screen height. Perfect. Next up, we're going to need a clock for the game. This one isn't going to be too imperative since we're just doing like tic-tac-toe, but I mean, you're usually going to just need them in most Pygames that you make. So let's say pygame.time.clock. After that, let's work on the main while loop that's going to be running throughout the game. So we'll say run equals true, and then while run clock.tick. Let's give a value of like 50. Aside from that, we're just going to add an event listener. So we'll say for event in pygame.event.get. If the event type equals pygame.quit, then run will equal false, and the loop will end. After the loop, what we're going to do is just pygame.quit. So when we run this, we're just going to get a black window. Ignore the little glitched line in the middle. It's not relevant. So let's go ahead and add the background, which is for now just going to be the board picture that we have. So let's create a function called redraw game window, and this is going to be running every single frame, updating the display. So redraw game window, and we are going to say win.blitz board comma at 0, 0. So we're going to be displaying the board image at the point 0, 0. So the top left corner of the board will be in the top left corner of the window. And so when we run this, we do not get oh, we have to call it, my bad. So we call this at the very end of the while loop, so we'll go down here, redraw game window, run, and god dang, it is still not working. Sorry, and then in the redraw game window, we have to say pygame.display.update, and that's what actually updates the screen. So now when we run it, we will finally get our tic-tac-toe board. As for the right side, I'm just going to make it all be like a grayish color, so we can, right after where we blit that board, we can just say, we can do pygame.draw.rect, and we'll put it on the window. We'll give it a color of, let's just make it black actually, so 0, 0, 0. It's going to start at the pixel 600. 0, the width is going to be 200, and the height is going to be 600. So now when we run it, it'll cover up all of that junk that was over there. Oh, so this needs to be a list, so we have to just put brackets around this. And so now all of it's covered up, and it kind of looks a little more clean. So we got the board on the left. On the right side is just a black rectangle that we're eventually going to put with, we're going to put like some text here, like saying whose turn it is, maybe keep track of when, maybe have a button that says like play again or something like that. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to create a class called piece, and this is going to represent the X's and the O's in the game. And so let's create the init function, and inside of the init we need to pass it an X and a Y value, and we need to give it a letter value, so whether it's X or O, and I guess we can just make that a Boolean, so we'll say is X. So if is X is true, then the value of that piece is an X, and if it's false, then it's an O. Okay, so next what we're going to do is we're going to assign the values of the parameters to the two variables inside of the class. So we'll say self.x is going to equal X, self.y is going to equal Y, and then self.isX is going to equal isX. And then we're going to go through a couple of if statements. So basically, we're going to have, we obviously have two different images, one's for X, one's for Y, so we'll say if is X, we are going to say self.image is going to equal X underscore image, and then else self.image is going to equal O underscore image. Next, what we're going to do is we are going to create a draw function. So we'll say def draw, and we're going to pass in the window, and we'll say pygame, well, no, we'll say win.blit self.image at the point of self.x and self.y. Awesome. And so once we get that created, we need to have, we're going to need a 3x3 matrix that's going to store all the values of the tic-tac-toe board. And so the way we're going to take care of that, oh, we need a colon right here, by the way. So the way we're going to take care of that is by creating a list at the very top, and we'll call this board vals, and we'll say it equals an empty list for now. Well, so I think the easiest way to do this, I'm kind of winging this tutorial if you can't tell, but I think the easiest way that I can think of is to start it off to where there's going to be 3 lists of 3 values, and they're all going to start off with a value of 0. So we'll say 0, 0, 0, and then get out of that first one, create another list, 0, 0, 0, and then do it one more time, 0, 0, and 0. So what this is, it's 3 lists of 0 inside of a big list. So what I want to do is make the first one be row 1, the second one be row 2, and the third one be row 3. And then, for example, if a square gets taken by x, we'll change that value to 1, and then if a square gets taken by o, we'll change it to -1. And then it's good to have it set to 0 at the start, because that'll just make it a little bit easier to find out if that square has been taken or not. So if it equals 0, that means a player can actually go there. If it's not 0, then it can't be changed. So what we're going to do next is we're going to go down to the while loop, and we're actually going to check for the inputs of x and y. So what we need is to get the mouse values. What we're going to do is we're going to say mouse x comma mouse y is going to equal pygame dot mouse dot get position, so get underscore POS, and this is going to set the x and the y values of the mouse to those two variables, and then we're going to check to see if the mouse has been clicked. So we'll say click equals pygame dot mouse dot get underscore pressed. Awesome. And then the way we're going to check to see if the mouse has been clicked or not is if click does not equal the point 0, 0, 0. And so that whenever the mouse doesn't equal that value, that means the mouse has been clicked, and that's when we're actually going to start changing the list of all the values. So for starters, what we're going to need to do is, I think we'll just always have it to where x is going to go first. So we should probably have a move count here at the top. So let's just say like move count is going to equal 0. And once we realize that the mouse has been clicked, we are going to increment move count by 1. So we'll say move count is going to plus equal 1, and then we'll say if move count %2 is equal to 1, then we're going to create a new piece. So we will say, okay, so we should also have a list of pieces, right? So we'll say pieces like on board is going to equal an empty list for now, but we'll append that to that list to make it easier to draw them later on. So we'll say pieces on board dot append a new piece, and we're going to give it the x and the y value of mouse x. So we'll say mouse x comma mouse y, and then as far as is x, we will say true, because for the very first move is going to be move 1, it's going to be x. So if it's when you divide the number by 2, if the remainder equals 1, then it will be x. And then we can copy this line, and then we can say else it will be the same thing but false. So the way that we're going to add the new piece to the list up here that we called board values is so under both of these pieces on board dot appends, we're going to say board vals, and then so we need 2 indexes. The first one's actually going to be the y, because the first list is going to be vertical, and then the second one's going to be like the horizontal placement. So we're going to do mouse y divided by 200, and then the second index that we're going to be changing is mouse x divided by 200. And since we're on x, we'll say x is 1, and then we'll copy that line, paste it down here, and then instead of saying 1, we'll just say -1. So 1 is going to be x, -1 will be y, and then if it's 0, that means it's empty. So actually, before we do either of these two things, we would have to check. So we would have to actually check to see if this equals 0 in the first place. So let's copy this, and then go up here and say if, and paste that, is equal to 0, then we'll do these two. So we'll say tab, we'll tab that over, and tab that over, and we'll do the same thing over here. So copy this if statement, go down here, paste it, tab, and then tab. Fantastic. And now that I think about it, maybe we shouldn't be incrementing move count up here. We should actually only be incrementing it if the move that the user just did is actually valid. So we are going to cut that, and we're going to paste it in here and then paste it down there. And then highlight all of this and then just tab it back over. Well, no, actually, no, my bad. We'll keep that over there. And yeah, that looks good. The last thing we want to do is, since we want x to be first, we just need this to be 0, and then that should be functional. So what this code right here is going to do is it's going to add the piece to the pieces list, and then it's also going to store what the value of that value in the list is, whether it's an x or it's a O. And yeah, so the way we can actually display the changes to the board is going to be in the redraw game window. So we'll go in here. Okay, so we're going to say for piece in pieces on board, we're just going to say piece.draw. Now this is almost complete, but the only addition we have to do is, since the user can, like, if from here to here, if this is all one square, and the user presses like right here, for example, when the top left corner is right there, we don't want the top left corner of the picture to be down here. We want to move it up to where it's going to be either at like 0, 0 or like 200, 0. So we want it to be organized. So in the draw function, we're actually going to, instead of saying self.x and self.y, we're going to say self.x and then like t for, actually we can do that outside the draw function. Let's do that in here. We'll say self.x, I don't know, true, and self.y true. And these values are going to be, they're going to be set equal to self.x divided by 200. So for example, if self.x is 435 and we divide it by 200, we'll get 2. And then we'll remultiply it by 200. So this is just going to take out, well, actually, I guess another way you could do this is just self.x equals self.x true is going to equal self.x minus parentheses self.x percent 200. And I think that should work. Let's do that for the y as well. So self.y true is minus self.y percent 200. And so down here in the draw, instead of saying x, we'll say x true, and then we'll say y true. And so let's run this and see what happens. So if I click right here, it crashes because the list index is out of range, which means, oh, so down here I accidentally said 2 instead of 200. So all of these should be 200s. Divided by 200, divided by 200, and yeah, I think that's all of them. Let's try that one more time. So if I click right here, we get an X. If I click right there, we get an O. There's an X, and then here will be an O, and then like here's an X, there's an O, X, O, X. So that's basically the whole game. That's how it works. The only thing we have to work on now is just detecting whenever the game is over, because the way it's set, I mean, both X and O can win, and the game isn't really doesn't have any logic to figure out what's actually going on. So we just need to implement some functions that will check to see if the game is over or not. So that's going to wrap it up for part 1 of this tutorial series. I hope you guys enjoyed, and in the next tutorial what we're going to be doing is actually checking to see if the game is over. And then after that, we'll start kind of messing around with how the bot's going to be playing against you, and whether if you want to set it to like be one player or two player.